G'day guys, we're back again with our eschatology study, and as always we've got John and David here. Hello guys.
Hi, how you doing?
I think we should probably apologise before we get into this already, a preemptive.
As always.
An apology is good. That John's glasses are not straight. It's not your screen that's...
No, these ones are straight, Josh. The ones I had
straight.
last week.
Don't adjust your sets.
But one is lower than the other? What?
No, not these ones. These ones are good, aren't they?
They're straight. Well,
Yeah.
in past weeks, John's had unstraight glasses, and some viewers at home have found it very distracting, and we just want to apologise for that. For all those skew with.
All the OCD people.
That's all right. You may need to find something else to be distracted about this week. Right.
Yeah, crack into it.
Okay, so we're in the central section of Revelation now, and last week we got introduced to this being known as the dragon. And the dragon apparently is the embodiment of the enemy, the devil, if you like. And we were introduced to another being, a woman, this amazing woman who represents the community of Christ throughout the entire ages. First to Israel, who brought forth the Messiah, and then that became the church. Now, it didn't say a lot about Jesus in his life, not much at all, but it alluded to the defeat of the dragon. And the consequence of the defeat of the dragon by this child, by the Christ child that the church brought forth, was that the dragon is enraged. And chapter 12 showed in concept form and in symbolic form the anger of the devil, essentially. But chapter 13, as we move into today, it shows that, well, the anger of the devil manifests itself in a very concrete human form, in the form of human institutions. And so that's what we're going to really look at today. How exactly the Bible predicts that the anger of the devil is manifested in the Christian age. John.
Yeah, the dragon, it was obviously Satan, gives authority and power to this a beast that we'll find in here. And this beast is enraged and is attacking the church. And it seems to be winning as we read through this. It seems to be this beast has incredible power and is also a harlot, and that is involved. And it looks like the dragon's going to win. But all the way through the book of Revelation, you see a flip, that you see this sort of imagery that looks like violence and rage, but then it flips. So you've got a lion that's ferocious, but then it flips to be a lamb. And all the way through this book, you're going to see this. It looks like the church is going to lose here, but something happens, and we'll get to that in a minute. But there is an idea that this beast is actually well, it says that it has this beast come out of the sea having 10 horns and 7 heads, and horns always represent authority. So this beast seems to have a lot of authority, and it's raging against the church. And also there's an element that it may even be a political force, and people follow and worship this beast.
I'd go a step further, and I would say I think we're getting tipped off that it's quite clear that it's a political entity. I mean, not necessarily one single political entity, but this is the concept form of what the paradigm of what Antichrist looks like. And why I say that is because the appearance of this beast that comes out of the sea takes the form of a morphing of all 4 beasts from Daniel 7. And those beasts were clearly political entities. They were the kind of the superpowers of the day consecutively.
Yes.
So I think that this is what we're being told in code form is that these are powers.
Yes, and all through history, you're going to remember when we're reading the book of Revelation, it was written to a particular group of people, a church, suffering under persecution and under a Roman Empire that looked very ferocious. And we had Nero who would persecute Christians by dipping them in oil and burning them and riding his chariots around in celebration, quite mad. And it looks like he's going to win. But there's a twist in it. Even though these people will possibly be martyred, they actually win.
I think it's very reassuring to me that the chapter we've just gone through, chapter 12, we've already been tipped off that the dragon and the beast have lost.
Yes, yes, yes.
So we've read the ending before we've actually read the story, and that's kind of reassuring.
Yeah. So this beast has the power of its violence, and it has a lot of weaponry, and it's also deception. So it uses deception to deceive us into following after this beast. Possibly also economics, that we tend to worship empires, and especially empires that are successful. And we put more allegiance into these empires because of the financial security than we do in Christ.
And I think the N word probably needs to be brought from the nationalism. The empires that have been worshipped over time, they'll always appeal to our nationalistic tendencies. Yes. And it can be a fine line between, I love my country and I'm proud of them when they score a goal at the World Cup. That's all very harmless and fine, and I love where I live and the culture, but then it's a fine line to then just push over into something that can look very ugly very quickly and end up being, well, my culture's better than yours, and then if you're not like my culture, then we're going to kind of push you out, ostracise you, or even worse.
Yep. There's also a story that I read, and just came back to my mind, that one of the ways they worship Caesar is that they'd walk into the town and they would have to acknowledge that Caesar was God, but they weren't it wasn't necessarily saying he's God, it's the empire that is God. He just represents the empire. And sometimes they would even put a symbol on their hand or their forehead. And that's where a lot of people get the idea of the mark of the beast as being empire worship.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's not just one beast here, though, is there? There's a second beast.
Yes.
And it's kind of like a good cop, bad cop scenario. The first beast is obviously bad. He's overtly bad. He's sort of charging around, looking very vicious, and he's got blasphemous names on his. He's got blasphemous names written on each of his 10 horns. So it's clearly against God.
Yep.
And you see that in let's call a spade a spade. You see that in entities in governments today that persecute Christians for their faith. But then the second beast, he's like the good cop. It says that he had horns like a lamb, so it looked very gentle and all that, but he spoke like a dragon. So he had all of the authority of the first beast and got people to worship the first beast.
Yes.
So when you start bringing in words like worship, that's a very religious word.
Yes. I know where you're going, Dave.
Where am I going, John?
Yes.
Well, it suddenly looks like bad religion.
It's bad religion, and religion that has lost the sight of following the Lamb.
Yeah.
They're following economic security, they're following their nation and their political allegiance.
Yep, absolutely.
That's huge what you just said. I've never thought of it in that way before. Always thought of it as like they had to worship the beast, and that was like which is worshipping bad. In the same way that I guess we'd say that like we all worship something, it's kind of vague.
Okay. Yep.
I've always thought of it as that, but to say that I guess worshipping is, I guess, like in your religious,
Giving.
literal religious sense.
and giving worth to, like, is what worship is. You know, not just, I think they're wonderful, but it's an allegiance. It's a, you know, and it's happened all through history. It continually manifests in different ways, but empire worship is very real. And the people of Israel, they didn't acknowledge Rome, they didn't like Rome, but every other nation that they conquered actually liked them because they improved the economy and they made beautiful roads and people started becoming prosperous, but Israel didn't go down that path, and they were persecuted for it. And especially the Christians who refused to acknowledge that Caesar was Lord. So they were persecuted quite severely.
I guess we've sort of alluded to it in past weeks about the nature of the economic persecution that the Christians would have undergone, and it was particularly in Asia Minor related to the guilds that they would need to belong to ply their trade, if you like. And the guilds were often associated with the temples, and so that was the coercive force, I guess, the leverage that they had to get the Caesar worship.
And lots of immorality.
Yes.
Temple worship and prostitutions, temple prostitutes.
So I guess when we come to another illumination of this, another iteration of this in chapter 17, where it calls it the harlot, that would have been very clear to the original readers what was happening there.
So the question for us is: do we follow the way of the Lamb, or do we follow the beast? You know, where's our allegiance? 666, David.
666, the mark of the beast.
What do we make of this? Now, Josh has got some great theories.
Yeah, so these are some of the best theories that I've ever heard. So a guy in a night owl once told me that the mark of the beast was PayPass.
PayPass, PayWave.
PayWave, yes, PayWave. So when you're using, because there's a chip in the card, and I guess then PayPal would be just as bad. And also the coronavirus app is the mark of the beast, and so is the vaccine.
Okay.
So those are some of the best ones best theories I've heard.
Well, in my day, it was definitely the bank card.
Yeah.
Bank card was 3 6s, and obviously they weren't even hiding it. It was the mark of the beast. You couldn't buy or sell without it, and that will become a cashless society. I think Josh said a couple of weeks ago he likes it being cashless.
I can't wait for cashless society. Can I say that? It's so convenient.
Yeah.
It's true, but I mean, let's face it, in other circumstances, if we had a nasty government, it could be a way to have a coercive economic force. However, I'm not saying that that's the mark of the beast, don't get me wrong, but there are countries in the world right now that are using that sort of an electronic means to persecute.
So what did it mean for the people of the day? I mean, we're looking at what we think it is now, but what did it mean for them?
Yeah, well, I think to know what it is for us now, we have to know what it was for them. Yeah, I think that's a fair call. So, what would you think, Josh, when you just read that?
Well, before we go into it, is it true that some translations even say 606?
616.
616.
Which was the number of Nero.
Okay.
That's why they believed that Nero was the beast. But most translators say it's 666, not 616. Because what the theory with Nero being the Antichrist was because you couldn't go into the city without acknowledging that he was Lord and God, and you get if you didn't get the mark to let you into the city, then you couldn't buy or sell. So that was one of the theories in some of the theological works, but most theologians will say it's not 616 or the number of Nero is 666.
Yeah. Well, my running understanding at the moment is, and I'm happy to be convinced otherwise, is that the mark of the beast is like your allegiance to the economy and to the nation. So I guess you could say like basically money and power. So if you're serving, and the mark of the beast is like there seems to be this reference, is what I know, to like a Shema prayer in the Old Testament, which is like this this prayer that you would write on your forehead and on your wrist to symbolize I'm going to think about the Lord, I'm going to serve the Lord.
Yep.
So this is like an anti-Shema, which is sort of saying I'm going to think about money and power, and I'm going to think about my nation's economy and the allegiance to my nation.
That's brilliant, Josh.
Yeah, so that's
good.
my understanding, and then these beasts. One beast will represent the economy, and one beast the nation.
Yeah, there's another theory also that it's a number of man, because it says 66 is a number of man. Man was born on the sixth day, but he's not. 7 is perfect. He's not perfect.
So it's unregenerate
man. And then you have 3 6s. The number 3 is the number of God. So in one sense, it's man believing he's God.
They'll often, the ancients' literature will often repeat something once, twice, 3 times for emphasis. So you've got 6, 6, 6.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's another theory again, though, isn't there, about the sort of involving what they call gematria, which is when a letter is assigned a number, and this was something apparently that was relatively well known in the ancient times and often used. So now, if John's wanting to write something that's clearly subversive about the emperor of the day, if you like, he's going to have to write it in code form. And so, like John was mentioning, the 616 was the number of Nero. If you use this gematria methodology, where each letter of the Greek alphabet is assigned a number, then the Nero Caesar, the word Nero Caesar, will come up to 666. You may need to translate it to Hebrew first, but you'll get there in the end.
Yeah.
And that's one of the most prominent kind of theories.
Yes, and the reason they wrote in code is because they didn't want the Romans to actually read this letter.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yes, it would get many people into big trouble.
Well, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Mm.
Yeah.
But look, I think all of these things we've talked about are absolutely consistent with the message of the passage, and that's all good.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're not trying to be dogmatic in our views, and some people have asked us that, and are we throwing out every other particular view? Not necessarily. Each method of interpretation has some strengths and weaknesses. The method that we're using here, the criticism to it is it over-spiritualises things. I don't necessarily agree to that, but that's one of the criticisms. But the beauty of it is that you're forever discovering more and more revelation and insight into the nature of Christ and His church as we read and start to understand the symbols.
What I've enjoyed about this personally is that, I guess, if you look in a futuristic view, this is the first time using the term, but you read Revelation and by the end of it you're confused and wondering what it means. Whereas with this method of interpretation, I finish reading, I feel encouraged and like I know more about God, which is, I know, at least a strength in that way. I found it really valuable.
Well, that's the promise. See, he who reads and understands the words of his prophecy shall be blessed. You're not blessed by understanding that Henry Kitchener is the Antichrist. Never blessed me. Or the great tribulations or raptures, and it was never a blessing. But reading it and seeing Jesus Christ in His church, that's a blessing.
I think also if you've got a paradigmatic interpretation, it's continually applicable. It's not just applicable to the original readers; it's continually applicable to every age.
Yeah.
Which I think is a real strength.
When we get into chapter 14, we come across this 144,000 again.
It's back.
It's back again. But I think we agreed last time we looked at this is a church, 12 patriarchs of the Old Testament and 12 apostles. 12 times 12 is 144. So it's just multiplied. And a lot of these numbers in the, well, can I say all the numbers in the book of Revelation are symbolic. And 144,000 is the church throughout history. So they show up again.
And it's meant to be a massive number, like not just a select few, but to an ancient number, 1,000 was kind of, that was their big number.
Like a bajillion, gazillion.
Right.
Yeah.
Because it was also described as a great multitude back
Yes.
in chapter 7, 6 or something.
I mean, I don't want to be cruel to the Jehovah's Witnesses, but the 144,000, it says they have to be chaste. They have to be virgins.
Virgins, and male virgins.
Yeah, so next time you have a Jehovah's Witness knock on your door, you could ask him if he's a virgin. So what is it? What do we mean when it says they're chaste? They're pure. They're sinless because they're the church. And,
I guess coming back to what we were talking about with the immorality that involved with the guild worship and temple worship,
yes.
pagan temple worship, that would be a symbol that resonated with the
that's right.
ancient Christians of Asia Minor.
They kept themselves away from that,
Right.
and they were considered as chaste.
It's not saying that
They were
sex is
virgins.
wrong as such.
No. There's another number here. Some translations say 200 miles. Because you guys say that. So we've got. I can't remember what actual verse it is, but I was just reading it before. 200, but mine doesn't say 200 miles. Mine says 1,600 furlongs. And
Very horsey.
Yeah, very horsey. But that actually is a number, and the number is 4. 4 represents the Earth. Now, I don't want to get into a flat Earth sort of theory here, but the 4 corners of the Earth represent the Earth. So 4 is the number of Earth, and 4 times 4, so it's a universe. Times 10, which is completion, times 10 is completion. So it's actually referring to the whole universal eternity of human life. So numbers are important, and we're going to get to some more numbers as we go through. So try to, when you're reading it, try to think of the symbolic meaning of the number. So it's not literally 144,000 saints. It's 12 times 12. And the number 7 represents perfection. 10 always means completion. 3 means God. 6 means man. 5 means grace. So, yeah. And we'll get to that as we get into this temple that comes down out of heaven. So we see the grace of God in that.
What about, are we sort of ready to look at some of the theories of 666, or we've already done all that?
We did a little bit of that, but yes, the latest one, I suppose, that is capturing people is this COVID-19 vaccine.
Oh, the vaccine.
That
I didn't know there was a vaccine.
Not yet, not yet. Coming. But Bill Gates is making one, and I mean, I don't want to be mocking, but I'll do a little bit. I had a pastor that told me that that it won't succeed because the gates of hell will not prevail against the church. And Gates meant Bill Gates, who's putting a lot of money into researching a vaccine.
Jesus knew Bill Gates was coming.
He knew, yeah. And
prophesied against him.
So, there's a theory going around, you'll probably come across it, that Bill Gates is the Antichrist, and he's creating a vaccine, and because he's a computer whiz as well, he's going to somehow inject a solution into that vaccine that'll be able to trace you wherever you go.
I thought it was supposed to control what you think as well, especially Christians.
Control you. Oh, yes, that's another thing. That it can change the mind of a religious person to a non-religious person. That might be a good idea. But anyway.
John, that's terribly subversive.
Yes, but there's a lot of theories going around this about Bill Gates. Can I say Bill Gates is one of the most generous people on the planet?
I feel bad for Bill Gates because I see him as actually a really good guy, and
Yeah.
I hope he doesn't know some people think he's the Antichrist.
No, he does
Sure
know.
he does.
I've seen an interview with him just recently where he doesn't get upset about it. He says, "Well, people are struggling, to understand what's going on, and so they come up with these sort of conclusions." But just to fill you in a little bit, Bill Gates and Bono set free some African nations of their debt.
The
Billions and billions of
Millennium
dollars.
Jubilee project.
So he's not a bad guy.
Like Josh said, he's probably the world #1 philanthropist.
Yes.
That's a really nice thing to do. Like a whole nation. What does that look like? The whole nation's debt.
Yeah, just paid it off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And not only does he give away billions and billions of his own money, but he has a trust fund
Yeah.
that many other people like Warren Buffett donate billions of their money into as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this vaccine is supposed to be able to trace where you go. You don't need a vaccine for that.
You've just got a phone.
You just need an iPhone.
That's right.
It'll tell you a good little exercise. I think Josh has done it. You put your phone down and talk about any subject, and then go to Google,
Yeah.
and that subject will come up as ad.
Yeah. Watch what ads pop up on the.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a little scary.
So your phone is listening to you.
I had a question just quickly before we talked about the 666 likely being a symbol for Nero. Does that mean that the Antichrist is solely Nero, or is it possible that we can interpret this as other?
No. Right through history, there's always been these characters.
Yeah, so
There's
it's a
always been-
paradigmatic principle, if you like, of what Antichrist looks like in principle. And like I said before, that's applicable almost infinitely
Yeah.
through the ages.
Yeah.
Right.
So these guys, they believe they're God. They believe that they're, sent from God, God's anointed. Well, I won't say any more.
And religion
Religion follows. Yep.
pushes people in that direction.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's been lots of strange theories about the Antichrist and the mark of the beast, and they've been wrong every time. I think it's time that we look at how the church actually interpreted the book of Revelation throughout history, not just in the last 150 years, as the futurist view is a very recent view.
And perhaps that we no longer look to the next news story to...
Well, it's called eisegesis. Is the way to study the Bible is looking at something that's happening in the world and see if it fits in the Bible. Well, that's a bad method of interpretation. Exegesis is looking at the Bible, what the Bible says about the Bible. So the Bible interprets itself, and you'll find these symbols elsewhere in the Scriptures. So even the concept of way back in the Old Testament of Pharaoh with the plagues, there was a celebration at the end of this when the plagues were over. And here we have a similar thing when the empire is defeated. There's a celebration, a song that the church sings.
Yep.
So it's always been there. There's always been these powers that think they're more than human and ordained by God, or they are God, or some sort of God.
Yep.
And they use their political force and deception, lies, and manipulation.
Probably the only other thing we haven't said about this is just how the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet here, the dragon and the two beasts, mimic the Holy Trinity. It's like an unholy Trinity.
Yeah.
So where Christ died and rose again, you've got the first beast that
Has
had a deadly wound but was
Resurrected,
raised,
yeah.
and the false prophet is the religious one and points people towards the beast,
Yes.
just like the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
So you've got that parody there.
Yeah.
Quite clever, really, I think.
Yes.
Anyway, well, anything else to be said, or should we?
Oh
wrap up?
no, but stay tuned next week because we have Armageddon.
Ooh. Sounds exciting.
Is that going to be the last one?
No, there's another one after that,
Okay.
which actually it starts to get really exciting here. The visions that unfold are just absolutely beautiful of this holy city coming down out of heaven.
Yeah, it's a real highlight, isn't it?
Yeah. And we cannot skim over Revelation chapter 20. That will be an important chapter. But yes, so whatever theories you've heard about the Antichrist, I guarantee they're most likely gone, dead and past. I think Henry Kissinger is still alive, so it's a slim possibility.
Okay.
I think he's about 96 now.
So if he's the Antichrist, it's about
He was-
something really bad in the next couple of years, if he is.
Well, he might have to die and then come back to life, like the
Yes.
beast. Yeah.
And there's always been theories that the false prophet is the Pope.
Yes. Yep.
All through my history as a Christian, that was always been told me that the false prophet was the Pope. And then I started actually listening to Pope John Paul II. I thought, gee, he makes like a lot of sense. He was a very smart man who believed in regeneration of the human soul through accepting Jesus Christ. So I don't know what was false about him.
Well, you're on dangerous ground there, John. You're going to stir a hornet's nest, I think.
Yes, so don't think too ill of different denominations.
Yep. Yep.
They're all got their strengths and weaknesses.
Definitely. Are you saying that we've got our weaknesses, John?
I'm
Surely
sure there's one somewhere. Yes. Oh, well,
Josh is scoffing at that one. Surely
Yeah.
we couldn't have one.
yes. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll look forward to next week and struggling with the issue of Armageddon and what it is and what it means, and is there a big battle that's going to unfold in the future that everyone's going to fight out at the end of the world and in the valley of...
Do we need to stockpile weapons? That's the question. Maybe not. I shouldn't say things like that, should I?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Josh.